Don Larson, CEO and founder of the Sunshine Nut Company. Thanks so much for being a part of our network, our center, and our movement to promote people-centric business the way we believe capitalism was meant to work. You are such a great example of that. So thank you so much for doing what you do and for being here.
Great. It's great to be here. Thank you, Chris. I'm going to enjoy this time together talking.
I've looked forward to talking to you for so long, actually, just personally knowing about you for many years. We talk about Adam Smith a lot, and you don't hear a lot of business journalists talking about Adam Smith. But we do because, he's well known for the wealth of nations and that famous saying, maximizing self-interest leads to the greatest prosperity for all. But a lot of people don't really understand the full breadth of what he meant by that, because he explained it in another book called The Theory of Moral Sentiment, where he said no matter what or how selfish man may seem to be, he desires more than anything to see the betterment of others. And he talked about that idea of maximizing self-interest being the betterment of your community, the betterment of your world, the betterment of everything around you leads to your own self-interest, as well. And you are the epitome of that idea. And your business model accomplishes so much through this altruistic motive. You provide an incredible and superior product that sells extremely well, but it's sourced in a very people-centric way. And that is at the heart of, I think, what is so powerful and so appealing to us about what it is you do. So do me a favor and give our viewers, especially those who aren't familiar with what you do, a quick overview of your approach, and specifically how you obtain your product in that uniquely people-centric way.
Yeah, well, so I had been a Hershey executive for many years, and my job was to fix things. And so they sent me a new place every year that was helplessly broken. And the last job was in cocoa. At the time, we were being accused of child slavery and labor and things like that in Africa. So they put me on the cocoa desk to buy the cocoa. We didn't deal directly with anything in Africa other than to count the cocoa pods. We dealt in New York. But I got to go over to Africa to do fundamental assessments on the crop, so that when we were in the market buying, we were either had a different view than the market, so we either buying or not buying. But got me able to see, the things in Africa that bothered me, which was all the resources, all the capability was there. It just needed someone to introduce it. And so I decided to leave Hershey and go to Africa, to Mozambique, Africa, in order to prove out a business model very similar to Milton Hershey's model of using a company and a product to take care of all facets of the business. And so back 100 years ago, he founded an orphanage, and he and his wife couldn't have kids, and he had orphans there. And that grew to the point that he gave the full company and his fortune to an orphanage. So what people don't know is the controlling interest of Hershey chocolate is an orphanage today. And my father-in-law, my wife's father, was an orphan, grew up in the Milton Hershey School. And so he not only took care of orphans, he took care of the farming communities, not only the milk farmers all over Pennsylvania and surrounding states, but even down in Cuba, the sugar farmers, building communities, schools, health facilities, everything. And then he took care of his employees, and there's many, many stories about that. And I just fell in love with the culture of Hershey. And it was slowly changing a bit. And I decided, well, I'm going to take this model to where it's really needed. And it's probably the most needed country in the world, Mozambique, Africa. And so I developed a premium product that I could use to take care of the subsistence farming communities. These are families, like 80% of Mozambique is in agriculture. Yet the government says 99.9% of people in agriculture are subsistence farmers. So by default, 80% are not really working. They're just trying to grow food to stay alive. Okay. And so it's a desperate need. And what they do is there are cashew trees prolific all over Mozambique. And most farmers have about 20 trees. It offers them about $30 a year in income. The average income of a smallholder farmer is $30 per
Wow.
year. And so our model, it's a comprehensive solution, very holistic. It involves all links of the value chain. So what we wanted to do is first develop a brand. We did that. I moved to Mozambique 13 years ago. I put in a factory in a free trade zone. Did that a lot at Hershey and even before Hershey. In fact, I built the largest cocoa processing factory in the world outside of Hershey. And then it was sold, and that allowed me to do what I wanted to do. But it's not just the brand. We established the brand, we launched it, we were buying off local companies that were shelling cashews. It's a very, very exploited commodity. People thought that cocoa was exploited. Cashews are pretty exploited. You know, the farmers, they get paid a fraction of what they should. And what we're doing is we established the brand, and now we're going into the communities and we're vertically integrating down to the smallholder level. And we've introduced a model where we can aggregate smallholder farmers using community farms that we establish, not in our name, in the community's name, so they have land ownership for the first time. Each farmer gets 5 acres, 500 cashew trees, which we supply with a nursery, a cashew tree nursery. Last year, we grew and helped the communities that we're involved with plant 200,000 cashew trees. But for a family to plant 500 trees, their income has gone from $50 to $3,500.
Oh my
And
God.
then we put a village factory in that village. And it's a very basic, it's an off-grid factory using solar panels, but using the cashew shell waste, it's a environmental hazard, quite honestly. It's 80% of the raw cashew nut is shell and cashew nut shell liquid, which is kind of a toxic substance, but it's used for brake lining. We can capture that in a biofuel, and the remaining part of that. So with the cashew shell, you end up with a third cashew biofuel and a third of biochar, which you can use in the boiler. So we use that in our off-grid factory with solar panels. We have solar-powered water wells. So we're basically off-grid, no expenses, but it allows each of those farming families to shell their own cashews and earn about 40% more for their harvest. So typically, I've seen anywhere from 25 to 60% of what they should be getting, they actually get in the old system. With our system, it'll be 140%. But that's just the straight income, going from about $30 to $5,000. And a community is about 150 families. We're currently working in 4 or 5 communities. But the next stage then is our roasting and packaging facility. And then we bring it to the US. We've been selling in Whole Foods for 10 years. We're selling on QVC. I've had a couple shows while I'm back in the US here. Tomorrow I have another show before I head off to Africa again. But all those sales, then, we take a good portion of the profits from those sales and we feed it into our philanthropic foundation. So what we've elected to do, if you can imagine this, the different pieces of the puzzle of this full puzzle of the cashew value chain, we handle the cashew tree nursery, the 750-acre community farm, and the 500 metric ton village factory as a nonprofit, because everything that's made there, it goes back into the community. We then buy as a for-profit off of those factories at a market rate or above. And so that's an additional amount. What we make in the marketplace goes back into those communities as well. So each village we're in, we've got the nursery, the farm, and the factory, but then we had a transformation center, a subsidized store, and sunshine homes where we take care of vulnerable women matched up with orphan children. So it's a very complex system, but it's a complete system that allows us to raise the standard of living quite substantially.
That's
So,
extraordinary on so many levels, obviously. And thank you for, giving our viewers such a complete and eloquently presented picture of it. I appreciate that. I mean, it's so incredibly powerful and such a great proof that you can. I mean, you've got the philanthropic secondary aspect of this as well, which is extraordinary that you funnel so much back towards people in that arm. But the fact that you created a for-profit company that can do business this way is so incredibly powerful and such a great proof that you can not only do business this way, you could do business this way, create incredible systemic change, and make a very good and handsome profit doing so, and be very successful doing so.
yeah,
And just to kind of tack on to that, the whole customer side of this, doing business this way, you've talked about how this allows you to have a superior product as well, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So what we didn't anticipate was how good the product would be differentiated from the marketplace. But 63% of all cashews are grown in Africa. But over 90% of those cashews that are grown are shipped thousands of miles to Vietnam or India, where the shelling industry is. Not a very simple process of taking it out of the shell, But once it's out of the shell and it's a raw cashew nut that you can buy, those raw cashew nuts, it's months until a roaster or a packager gets those cashews. And so you get a very bland, stale, chalky cashew as a result. I know because I ran a Hershey factory that used to coat cashews in chocolate. And boy, the cashews we'd get in from India at the time were just nasty. I mean, but you put a lot of chocolate on them and people can't tell. It's why you see a lot of heavy ingredients on the cashews that might as well coat it with cardboard, because you really can't taste the cashew, and nor do you want to taste the cashew. With us, we literally, because of the farmers and what we're doing, we're able to, even with the local factories that we had shelf for us up until this vertical integration, our time would go from months to years, typical of the cashew industry, down to days, weeks. And that
Wow.
change, if we capture it and put it in a premium foil package with nitrogen flushing to take out the oxidative effect, you get an incredibly fresh cashew. And that's what's differentiated ourselves in the marketplace. And it results in a very long shelf life. And so we're just going to get better and better. We're working on the ability to take the final part of the shell off and roast it the same day. Nobody's going to do that. Okay. And because we're dealing directly with the smallholder farmers, we have all the, the locations of where we buy. So we've got traceability, but most importantly, we've knocked out all the middlemen, and the middlemen are the ones that are making a large profit. Okay. So you take those links out and you can afford to pay the farmers more. You can afford the freshness, better product. But then we do all our philanthropic work because we've got those relationships right with the community. In the transformation center will be health services, medical services, a subsidized store where we're not bringing entitlement or dependency. We're not telling them that we're getting stuff cheap, but we can use the proceeds from the sales to then give them great deals on things that will improve their standard of living.
That's incredible. I mean, all that information, obviously, it's the proof that from an economic perspective, doing this the way you're doing it, this is self-sustaining, right? I mean, you're making the profit that you need to keep doing this, correct?
Yeah, what we have to go up against is some of the really cheap pricing in the marketplace that's paid. So there's a lot of cashews on the market. I'm like, well, the global price is this, and if that's your basis for everyone to buy from, kind of like the futures market,
Hmm.
how can you put a product so cheaply in a bag? The only way is if you're getting it far under what the market price is for the farmer, the farm gate price. So we've got to deal with that. But this is where it's eventually going to become known, just how little the farmers make
Hmm.
according to what they at least should make, and even what they should make, it's a fair and appropriate amount.
Yeah. And I'd read some in a couple of places where at first you weren't real big about telling your story about how you do
Right.
this. And then you finally, I think, realized that customers respond to this, don't they? When they hear this story and
Yeah.
they know this story, they do, don't they?
Yeah, they're very skeptical though. I mean, everyone has when I go to the food shows and people delve into what my story is because it's so radically different, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're like the real deal." Mean when I say I live 100% of the time in Mozambique, that I'm full time there, we have no home here in the US, and that I'm in the villages dealing with the farmers, and I'm doing all this work. That's when it really comes to bear that, okay, so you're not just writing a check to some charity and
Uh-huh.
claiming this. You're actually it's these are partners that are integrated into our supply, and we're getting partnerships like with Total Energies. We were invited up to the conflict regions up north where there's an Islamic insurgency because they had a $20 billion project shut down. And they're like, Don, we need you to provide income and start bringing peace through prosperity. Can you come up and deal with some of the communities and help them? So we did that. It's gotten such great reviews that now larger companies are coming to us and saying, hey, we can't offer technical jobs that are mining jobs or energy jobs and things like that. We can hire a certain portion, but you can hire the whole community,
Wow.
and so we're going into a lot of communities. I think it's going to be a very busy 10 years of us dealing with a lot more communities. We've got to really increase our sales. But the great thing is, I'll give you an instance. We're dealing with the Kenmare Minerals out of Ireland. They have been mining about 300 hectares every year. Well, they're doing a lot of social economic projects, but they're doing like a salon, a restaurant, and they're not being frequented because nobody has any disposable income. So I
Mm.
said, wait until we have every member of the community making $5,000, and let's say it's 150 families. 150 families times five, that's over $700,000 of export cash coming into that community.
Yeah.
You're going to now see all those restaurants and those laundry and all those places. There's going to be a lot of spin-off businesses. People are going to start buying motorcycles and improve all types of trades are going to start because you've got the core income coming in to just start the economic engine from and having it roll. Okay.
And that's
So that's
world
kind of what we're
changing.
proving
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, that is world changing, community changing, generational change. I mean,
Yeah.
it's everything that you could possibly want for, economic improvement, and
Yep.
all being done because of this business model that you've got, which is extraordinary. Do people ever ask you, you live in Mozambique, you're the real deal, quote unquote, and what an amazing, beautiful story about Hershey's and your connection to it, which, thank you for sharing that. I didn't even know that, by the way.
Mm.
But, do you have, is there anything else in your personal makeup, your personal DNA, that makes you want to do business this way and love doing business this way?
Yeah. Well, there's a faith component, which is not a faith. There's no motive other than I want to be. significant. I want to build a legacy. I want to have something that lives on, that does good. I spent a lot of years like, I was pretty high. I got pretty high. I was in my early 40s, CEO, $100 million company, and it was all up from there. But I just didn't feel like that was the ladder I wanted to climb. And I wanted to climb a ladder that I felt fulfilled, and Milton Hershey did that. He spent most of his years at the orphanage with the kids. We have now 35 kids that we've signed for. So I thought I was done with children. I'm hoping to have hundreds of children. And when you get children that are beaten and raped and haven't gone to school and just the most miserable circumstances. I mean, Mozambique, you can imagine how poor it is. But if you're out on the streets as an orphan, it's in really bad shape. Well, we've recovered. Usually takes about a month, but the kids that we get, they're in private school now. They're exceeding in their class. The first three that we got were three siblings out on the road. And her name is, the oldest was Cecilia. She was 12. She said, I want to be a lawyer when we first met her. I want to help people that can't help themselves. Well, it's 10 years later, and she's in her last semester of law school. And, it's hundreds of stories like that, not just with our orphans, but with the communities, the farming. All of them are seeing much better lives. And that's the real abundant life. Okay. We've sold off everything. I mean, money's fine, but what do you do with your money? And if you look at most of the people that have money now, they've realized that. And they're like, with foundations giving it away. Well, I don't think it's too much fun to give away. If you can do business and do good while you're doing business, that's the real ticket. And companies used to do that. I mean, every year I was going to the Responsible Business Forum at Oxford, inside business school. And, it was always about, Milton Friedman, right? Milton Friedman, where he said the business of a company is to maximize shareholder value. When that happened, a lot of philanthropic efforts in companies disappeared. It was all put it in the shareholder's pocket. And I think that was a mistake, because businesses can do such good for the communities, but it's good for business as well. It's good for the communities. And if you look at what Hershey did you go to Hershey, Pennsylvania, it's like a utopia, because during the Depression, he didn't want to lay off any of employees. So he put them all to work building stuff. And so now we've got this incredible community of every kind of standard of living increase: theaters, amusement parks, arenas, pools, everything. And that is the type of, I think, responsibility that businesses should have. They should take care of their communities, their employees. They should take care of the people providing inputs, and have it reasonable across the board. And that's what we're trying to do as Sunshine Nut Company.
And, when you talked about Friedman, it was almost an arbitrary comment, and it made business so inhuman. And the thing is, business is not inhuman. It's businesses are owned and run by humans, and with human impulses. And I think one of the greatest things that I read, from you is when you were asked about your metrics one time, you said, that one of your greatest metrics of success was tears of joy. That you frequently break into when you see the lives of how many of these children have changed, for the better. And it was just such an extraordinary quote, and that's got to make you incredibly happy, right?
Yeah, it makes everyone happy, Chris. Everyone involved in our business is so happy to be there. I mean, my employees, we give them off because we don't have sales enough to keep the factory running a lot of time, and they don't want to go home. This is their family. They're so conscientious about the quality of the product. this is their product, and they love the fact that it's taking care of people. I love that aspect of Hershey. I really did. I mean, I
Yeah.
would go, I flew a hot air balloon on the side. I would always try and land it in one of the hundreds of orphan homes, that they have, the Milton Hershey homes, that because there's tons of kids that I could help have them put the balloon away, but I would give them tether rides and everything. It's just an incredible feeling when you know that your company and your business is doing good and making the world a better place. Our slogan is we make the world's best to make the world better.
I
And
love that.
that was a high-end marketing agency, and they're like, Don, usually we have to make up stuff to make companies look good. You have way too much happening that we can't bring it down into a manageable, marketing slogan. So you can argue that you make the world's best cashews, and you can argue that you make the world better. And those
Yeah.
two components kind of drive our business: excellence and doing good.
God, I love that. It, you know, you've said so much, and you were talking about, the responsibility to do business this way, but it's also the opportunity and the ability, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you were teaching a business class, or you were teaching or talking to a group of young CEOs, founders, or leaders, uh, what would your advice be on how and why to do business this way?
Yeah. Well, first, it's to become good at what you're doing. A lot of people do this and they don't have a business background, and they just get slaughtered in the marketplace because you're going
Mm,
up against a lot of people that are doing things in a corrupt way, in a way that exploits and things like that. So you got to do it through excellence, with product, and with excellence with capability. Okay.
hmm hmm
But it really is, you've got to find the right people. And we've been through scores of people. I've had people just, when they see the philanthropic nature, they want to take advantage of that. And so you got to weed yourself through of finding the right people who have the same passions as you.
hmm
Um,
hmm
but but I think my advice is, um, I think most midlife crises aren't crises of I haven't made it to where I want. It's more of a crisis of I'm not fulfilled in what I'm doing, you know? And they think that money will eventually give them that happiness. But when you do things that are helping people, um, and you're involved in that improvement in people's lives, it's that's probably the most incredible feeling. It's the tears of joy. Whether
hmm
you cry over it, we tend to cry because our change in people's lives are so radical that I never used to cry, but now I cry all the time because it's just so wonderful to see people, when given the opportunity, to excel, to have dignity, to just feel good about themselves, and to participate and want to be like this. The retailers that we choose, a lot of them, they usually give people 15 minutes. Many times have an hour-long meeting or more. Some have followed me out to the car, and just completely changed, their day, because people want to be involved in something that does good, that makes the world a better place. Contrary to what the news and what you see, you know, it's people value the ability to have substance and to make a difference. And today's business climate, it's very difficult to find that opportunity. That's what I loved about Hershey so much, and that's why I decided to do this, on my own in a different way.
Well, Don, thank you so much. I cannot tell you how much we appreciate this. This has been extraordinary. One of the most inspiring interviews I've ever done. So I really appreciate that. And we need to get you back here and talking more and more, and get you as involved as you want to be in our center, because again, like I said, you are the epitome of what we talk about, and why we talk about it. And thank you so much for what you do, and for taking some time out of your day to be here and to relate it to our viewers. We really appreciate it.
You're quite welcome, Chris. And you know what you're doing is to try and inspire the population to transition to making the world a better place. That's incredibly admirable. I'm glad that we connected here because I think we're very like-minded.